It's finally time to really start paying attention to Bitcoin. Bitcoin and crypto have often been synonymous with volatile or risky, but things are about to change drastically with this new Bitcoin ETF. Bitcoin price is up 150% year to date, and that's nothing compared to where it could go. And now I know most of you tune into this channel because I am a finance professor, and so there is some level of credibility and a lot of research that goes into what I say to you. So it's not just opinion or hype, and today is no different. I invited a Bitcoin expert who literally wrote the best-selling book on Bitcoin, but he's versed not only in Bitcoin, but economics as a whole. Brian DeMint is the best-selling author of Bitcoin Evangelism, a serial entrepreneur, a jiu-jitsu black belt, and chief marketing officer of Orange Pill app. His teachings and knowledge have made me tens of thousands of dollars in this space, so I invited him on to tell us what this Bitcoin ETF is actually going to do, how much he thinks Bitcoin's actually going to be worth in the next 10 years, and more importantly, how you can invest in it safely and what resources you could use to start really understanding this amazing asset. All right, welcome Brian. Like I said, super excited to have you on the channel. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure, Nolan. It's always fun hanging out with you, my friend.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna get into learning a little bit more about you and your whole Bitcoin investing journey. But the big question on everybody's mind is, how far is Bitcoin going to go? Like, what is that price going to be? In all seriousness, we do want to know from the expert, just what are your thoughts on Bitcoin? Can it really get to where people are saying it's going to get to? And as investors, how can we start to think about this as an actual viable investment and not just this speculative price action, crazy asset that we're hearing about? So what are your thoughts?
I mean, that's a really good question. Now, I think that any honest investor is always going to say this. They probably should say this to some degree. I think I know where it's going. I just don't know when it's going there, right? And so I say throughout my book, and I say this in interviews, if asked, I think $1 million per Bitcoin is a bearish scenario. I think that is. I'd be incredibly disappointed if Bitcoin only gets to $1 million within, I would say, my personal take, within the next 10 years. I think it's actually gonna be shorter than that. There's a great phrase by Mark Twain, says things happen slowly and then suddenly. We tend to miscalculate how much things can change in exponential form. And that can happen in a really short period of time. Bitcoin moves in what we call epochs. Those are 4-year cycles, and it has an exponential factor because of some mechanics we can get into that happen within Bitcoin. But things tend to happen very fast within Bitcoin. I think that $1 million would be my bearish scenario. And sorry, what was the second part of that question?
No, that's amazing. I mean, first of all, just for anybody that is following along right now, I mean, we're at 40-ish thousand Bitcoin, so well under 50,000, but that would be more than a 20x. So that is a solid scenario, I would say, for us that are investing in Bitcoin. And you're saying that's your bearish case, so I like that.
Yeah, and just for perspective, in 2017, I think that was a lot of people's first bull run that most people that I know in the Bitcoin space experienced. That in 2017, Bitcoin started out at $900 per Bitcoin in January of 2017 and ended the year at $20,000 per Bitcoin. So a 20x happened in 1 year. More than 20x happened in 1 year in 2017. So this isn't like unprecedented for that to happen. Obviously, you're talking about bigger numbers, but we're also talking about far less than 1% of the world adopting this asset. The biggest institutions haven't even gotten in. One metric that I will note, in 2017, when that happened, in a 4-year period, so when it went from about 3,000 per coin to 20,000 in its last leg up in the in the bull cycle, it was only about $6 billion of new capital that came in. Most people don't understand how market cap works and the multiplier effect, but when you have a severely constrained supply of something in high demand, I call it capital flow inertia. It means that the new capital coming in has a multiplier effect. So $6 billion of new capital coming into Bitcoin actually accounted for 158 billion of market cap appreciation. So 6 billion made it go up from 3,000 per coin to 20,000 per coin. $6 billion is not that much when you're talking about the BlackRocks, the Van Ex of the world have not touched this asset class yet.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And this is actually why I wanted to have you on this channel, is to give us some of that research and more of that, obviously educated mind with our surrounding this, because I think we hear a lot of opinions, a lot of like, well, I think Bitcoin's going to hit $10 million just because like I would love it for it to hit 10 million. But I like that a lot, because that's the kind of talk that we talk about when we're talking about ETFs and other safe investing that I'm used to talking about on this channel. And so with that, you started to talk and mention just a little bit about the difference between maybe individual investors and possibly institutions. And so, recently we've been hearing a lot about this Bitcoin ETF. What is the big deal about that? Is that even going to make much of a difference? Is it worth it for us to kind of be understanding this a little bit more? Like, what significance does that have?
Yeah, for anybody that isn't familiar with a Bitcoiner by the name of Samson Mao, I suggest that you guys go and follow him on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. He makes my bear case, or my excuse me, I guess I call it my bear case of a $1 million Bitcoin. He says that when the ETFs come online, again, institutional investing, which we can kind of define that more in a second here, but he says that when these institutions come online, that worldwide, between institutions in the form of ETFs and then sovereign wealth funds, that means like the treasuries that nations have, that about $250 billion of capital is coming into the market. He says that within 90 days, we'll have a $1 million Bitcoin.
Wow.
Because of that multiplier effect. Again, for those of your audience that don't know, there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. Right now, there's about 19.5 million Bitcoin. You cannot make more other than what is pre-programmed to come in online every day. Every 10 minutes, about 6.25 Bitcoin are created. That doesn't matter if you try to mine it harder or not. A certain amount come into circulation every 10 minutes. And so when you have something that you cannot increase the supply of, like a stock, for example, you can do a stock split, you can issue more shares, you can do, even with gold, if the price of gold goes up, gold miners are incentivized to go mine more gold. You can change the supply of those assets. Bitcoin is it's not scarce, it's finite. And so I'd like for people to keep that in mind, is when you have a finite asset, then you have potentially $250 billion of institutional money coming online through the form of probably ETFs, because what the difference between an ETF and essentially what we have now is, right now you can go buy Bitcoin. That's my preferred method. I would suggest for anybody out there, I would suggest, if you want to touch and expose yourself to Bitcoin, buy some actual physical Bitcoin. You can do that through exchanges like Swan. That would be my preferred method, or River. But the ETFs are institutions, these big giant companies like BlackRock, that are saying, hey, we understand that you don't want to hold your own Bitcoin because you might be 65 years old and you don't want to go through the security of securing it yourself. Well, we're going to go ahead and do that for you. So while that's not my preferred method, that still means that billions of dollars are going to come online in the form of retirement accounts, in the form of pensions, in the form of government bonds, and all sorts of things that are going to be coming into this. Capital is going to flow into this asset class, because all of a sudden, the people who 2 years ago, Larry Fink, who's the CEO of BlackRock, 2 years ago, he said his clients didn't have any interest in this asset class. Well, guess what happened a year ago? He said, oh, guess what? We actually surveyed our clients. We asked them, what are the 10 top things that you guys are interested in? He said that the second answer got 200 votes. So the second most thing got 200 votes. And for context, Bitcoin, which was the number one answer, got 600,000 votes.
Wow.
So imagine you did a survey and you got 600,000 votes this is a giant survey they did, obviously. You get 600,000 votes by the proxy shares and all that kind of stuff. And then you get 200 votes for the number two thing. Guess what's happening now? 1 year after that, they're filing for an ETF. So things are moving rather quickly because the old guard that didn't realize how important this asset class was are starting to realize that there's a lot of demand for this thing. And guess what? All of that demand, all of those people that have that money that wants to go into Bitcoin, none of that's in yet. It's all on the sidelines. It's like the sixth man on a basketball team, just like, coach, put me in, coach, put me in. It's waiting to come in. It's not in yet, but it's about to be. As soon as that switch gets flipped, it's coming in, and it's coming in very fast.
Yeah, I like that. I really like the analogy of the sixth man. That's pretty, that's pretty good. I mean, really though, it just kind of blows my mind, especially what you were talking about before, that $6 billion moved that market cap so much, and that it, moved the market in general so much, and that, we have potentially 250 billion. And that's just the start. I mean, obviously, it's just like anything else. When people start to see things rise, they get greedy and they get excited and they want to jump in as well. And so I like what you're saying, though. I like two things that you said. The first thing is it happens fast. And so for a lot of people, unfortunately, they're going to kind of sit there and wait and hope that, once they see it go up, they're going to get in. That might be too late. So I do agree with that. The other thing that I really like that you said was that you would prefer that people invest specifically in the Bitcoin itself, not necessarily the ETF. And that's a big one. I think that I've been trying to get that across with my private coaching clients. And like you said, with all those people that have been asking about Bitcoin, I've been seeing the same thing in my private coaching financing, and so, or finance world. And the idea is people are just getting excited about it, but they kind of don't understand that maybe the ETF itself isn't necessarily the new investment. That's just going to be a vehicle for people that don't necessarily want to get their hands dirty or get in a little bit too deep, or just don't understand it, which is totally fine. That's a viable option. But I do agree with you. I think that if you're at all interested, that you start to learn about Bitcoin and about the different exchanges that you can actually get the actual Bitcoin. So good call.
Yeah, and if you do go through an exchange, also, if you leave it on the exchange, then it's kind of no different than if you bought the BlackRock ETF or one of these other ETFs. You're kind of trusting in the hands of a third party. And so that's one of the big tenets of Bitcoin, is that you can hold it yourself. It's kind of like akin to gold. Imagine you can invest in a gold stock, or you could buy gold and then ship it off to a vault somewhere where somebody else secures it for you. That's cool. But at the end of the day, the other option would be for you to store it in your own safe at home. Now that's just, you have different options, and so some people are going to exercise those options. I would say that Bitcoin's very easy to secure yourself, and so you have absolute autonomy and absolute authority over your own finances. And that's one of the big kind of unfair advantages of Bitcoin, is that it's like you could store $1 billion worth of money on a flash drive.
Yeah.
If you wanted to. You couldn't store $1 billion worth of gold under the floorboards of your house, right? That just, you don't, no house is big enough to store that much that much money. And so there's some new features that come along with Bitcoin that you don't have to engage in right away, but I would say that make that the goal. So if you start to invest and you go through the ETFs and things like that, make that your gateway drug. Or if you buy a little bit of Bitcoin and you hold it on an exchange, that's fine if you want to hold a little bit on the exchange. But once it becomes a material value, that's when you need to start thinking about what we call cold storage, meaning storing it yourself where you're in complete control of it. But don't let that be the barrier for why you don't touch it. Because a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to have to secure it, and if I lose my password, I'm going to lose all my funds. Actually, that stuff, that's a narrative of the past.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to secure your funds, but you don't even have to get to that point in order to get exposure to Bitcoin. So don't let that be the reason why you're out of this asset class.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think at the end of the day, it was one of the things that drew me into Bitcoin, especially at this point of the Bitcoin journey, is that it is a little bit tough. It is a little bit not perfectly user-friendly yet, because as soon as it becomes as user-friendly as like Venmo or something, that's when it's worth the most, and you hope that you got in when it was a little bit wild, wild west. So I totally agree with that. I like that. So real quick, now I know that I could ask this question and we could be here till 2025, but why should people actually care about Bitcoin? Like, what, like, the idea of it? Because at the end of the day, some people think of it as it's this, dark market. You use it to like sell drugs. Possibly it's something that goes up and then people lose a bunch of money because companies pull the rug, or CEOs are going to jail because of it. So all of that to say that, what we hear a lot from the media isn't the best as far as Bitcoin is concerned. And what we do kind of know is that it's some digital currency, and I'm not playing video games, so I don't need digital currency. And if I do, I'm just going to use PayPal or Venmo. So why should we care about Bitcoin as briefly as you can?
Yeah, I mean, so as much as it's fun to talk about the price, and we're on an investing channel and it's an asset I think that's going to help people build wealth, I personally think that the price is like the least important part of it. I think that that's something that comes along with it. And again, I do enjoy talking about it, but it's not the big umph. I think that we're talking about a transformational technology that changes the way the world works. And so, with the thing that orange pilled me, which was the thing that kind of woke me up to Bitcoin, or was the light bulb moment for Bitcoin, years ago, I heard this guy named Andreas Antonopoulos. He was on the Joe Rogan Experience. I think I'd even bought a little bit of Bitcoin before this. I was curious about it, but this was where I was like, oh, this is a big deal. He had mentioned that until Bitcoin, the invention of Bitcoin marked in 2009 was the first time in computer science history that we were able to take something digital and make it scarce or finite. Before that, you think about digital things, you could always copy and paste them. Like if I wrote down a dollar sign in a Word document, I can just, if that was money, I could just copy and paste the dollar sign endlessly. So you couldn't really have true digital money. You could have digital messages, you could have digital, like Venmo is a digital message for money, but the underlying asset is not digital itself. It's a physical asset that has digital representations of it. And the analogy he used was look at when things go from analog to digital, it can take away their values. Like the music industry was transformed when music used to be analog. You had to have the CD. You used to have the record in order to listen to the music. But then once Napster and LimeWire and MP3 came along, the music industry changed because these things that used to have value, every song had value. Now you could just copy and paste it and share it with as many friends as you wanted. So it took away the economic power of that industry. We're still seeing 25 years later, the transformation of that industry because it wasn't ready for the digital transformation. Bands are still figuring out how to monetize because it used to be much simpler. It's like when you played their song, they got paid because you bought their CD.
Right.
Now you can just share it. Money couldn't go digital until the invention of Bitcoin came along. It couldn't go purely digital until the invention of Bitcoin came along because we could never have money that people could just copy and paste endlessly. That's what makes Bitcoin important. It seems like a small detail, but this is like a BC AD moment in human history. It's a very big deal.
Well, in a second, I want you to give us a couple of resources, especially for new investors or people that are just, maybe not even investors yet. They're just like kind of interested in it. So if you have any, I want you to be thinking about that. But first, tell us just a little bit about you personally, about you briefly, specifically with your investing in Bitcoin and crypto, and then also your role in crypto now. I mentioned a little bit about the amazing book that I've read and had my students read, and then also a little bit about the Orange Pill app. But go ahead and tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so thank you for the shout out for my book. I think the book's a good place for somebody that's either starting out or somebody that's like, I kind of know this, but I don't know how to articulate it. I think it helps you to kind of it's like that idea of, can you turn around and teach it? You and I both train jujitsu. It's one thing to understand a technique, but it's another thing to turn around and show somebody that exact same technique. I think that the book helps get you there. There's another book called B is for Bitcoin. If you're a brand new person, it's like the ABCs of Bitcoin. It's like very distilled down. It's very, very simple. That's a great one. There's another book called, if you're a Christian, it's called The Bible in Bitcoin. And so it makes a Christian case, which I do a little bit in my book, but that one is very focused on that. But then in general, with my journey was, like I said, I got orange pilled. I got the light bulb moment 10 plus years ago. But you kind of build higher and higher conviction as you see things materializing. And it's forced me to study history more. I've done research for my first book. I'm in the process of writing for my second book. It's called Parallel, the Bitcoin Social Layer. And it's talking about the parallel economy that is coming, I think, in Bitcoin, which we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. But I think that's, you talk about utility for Bitcoin. The things that have been built in the last 4 years or in the last 2 years of this bear market are absolutely insane. So when people say that Bitcoin is not usable, just wait. The world's gonna see what Bitcoin's gonna do on a usability scale. That whole part's coming. But I started out in Bitcoin only. My focus was only Bitcoin. I kind of ignored the rest of crypto. And then at one point I started working on a crypto project. I was like, oh, there's some other interesting apps within crypto. I was fascinated by that. I spent a few years in that field. And I just realized that even though our team had a lot of good intentions, there was a lot of scamminess in that. And ultimately, the sad truth is that there's a reason why Bitcoin stands alone out of the other 20,000, 30,000 cryptos. And this is very, very important. The most important thing, or one of the most important things about Bitcoin, is that it's the first time we've been able to decentralize anything. I said it was the first time we were able to make something scarce. Humanity's never actually been able to decentralize anything. The American Constitution was the closest that we've ever gotten, but the problem with the American Constitution is it relies on humans, and humans are fallible. What Bitcoin relies on is decentralization through mathematics, and that is very, very reliable. So when you can decentralize something cryptographically, that's important. Unfortunately, the rest of crypto is very, very centralized. And I could go into that, why that's the case. But there's a reason why I've come back to a Bitcoin only stance. I would say if somebody's going to take their money and start investing in this asset class, it's akin, the rest of crypto is akin to a casino, or you could even say penny stocks. And people say, oh, there's a reason to be invested in penny stocks because the return on investment for not very much can be there. I would not play that game. Bitcoin is going, like I said, I think that the bear case is $1 million per Bitcoin. If you need any alpha over that, I don't know what we're doing here. Like, this is crazy. We don't need alpha over $1 million Bitcoin. You can transform your wealth. This isn't financial advice. This is just my opinion. If somebody can transform their wealth by investing in Bitcoin, I don't think you need any extra alpha that you think you might get out of crypto. But that's my personal take, and that's from experience. Again, somebody that worked for 3 years in crypto.
Yeah, and that's why I have you here. I don't want to hear too much opinion. I think we get enough of that, but I really like the style of your research, specifically in your book. When I read that book, to be honest, at first I read it because you're my friend, and I was like, I want to see what this guy can do. After reading that book, actually in the middle of the book, it was like a light bulb, because some of the book is about Bitcoin, but most of the book is about economics and just money and just understanding such big concepts that it's helped my teaching, honestly, in my finance classes. But specifically, just being able to understand just theory and how economics work, and basic supply and demand, and just all of that. But anyway, so great job on writing that book. To be honest, it's helped a lot of people. Anybody that I've told to read that book has given me a glaring review, and obviously all the reviews on Amazon that I've seen. What about this app? So what is Orange Pill app?
So Orange Pill app, it's pretty crazy. I was just at a Bitcoin conference a year ago, and I was promoting my book, just making connections. And I walked up to this booth, and the founder of the app had just launched the app at the conference. So this is brand new. It's a social network for Bitcoiners, but it's not a social media. There's a clear distinction. Social media, the point is to log in. There's a feed. What are people posting? The idea is you're supposed to stay in the app as long as possible because they want eyeballs and they want to sell you ads. This is completely different. It's actually a paid app. You pay $3 a month, and there's no feed. It just helps you find Bitcoiners that are local to you. So when you open the app, it shows you people that are approximately, because Bitcoiners don't want anybody to know exactly where they're at. It shows that a 5 mile or 10 mile approximation of people that are relatively close to you. So if I want to go out and grab coffee with a Bitcoiner, because my wife's sick of hearing me talk about Bitcoin. By the way, my wife's like all in on Bitcoin. You know her, like you've heard her. She can pitch Bitcoin too. But at a certain point, like, I've talked about it too much, and so I need to go find other Bitcoiners. Just last Thursday, I had lunch with another Bitcoiner, and it was great. I've never met this guy before. We talked a little bit online, and then we met up for lunch and talked for 2.5 hours. And it's just, when you have shared passions, you tend to have shared values on this thing. You meet really fun and interesting people. But what really made me gravitate towards this app is it's not just this like dorky app for getting guys to meet up and talk about Bitcoin. It's actually the base layer for the parallel economy that's coming. That's why I'm writing my book on this. It's one of the features we have launching next month. And when I say we, by the way, I didn't mention that when I was at the conference, I signed up for the app, and then had just been promoting the app through Twitter. It's like, hey guys, this is a really cool thing. Go sign up. The owner of the app, or the founder, he reached out to me. He said, "Hey man, we've been getting a lot of signups from your tweets. Would you mind taking over our social media accounts for a couple weeks and just seeing what you can do?" And so I started posting. They got more signups, and then he came back to me and said, "Hey, do you want to be a partner in the company?" And they cut me in on some equity.
Sweet.
That's how new this industry is. You can just show up to conferences and put yourself out there, and if you're willing to work, companies will cut you in on the action. I mean, it's a brand new industry for anybody that's looking to get into this. But what I was going to say was, what's launching early next year is the merchant section. So what you're going to be able to, when February of next year, you're going to be able to open up and not just find Bitcoiners that are close to you, but you're going to be able to find all the shops, the brick and mortar businesses that accept Bitcoin near you. So this is the start of that parallel economy, because you can actually go and find places that will transact in Bitcoin. If you want to go buy a taco and there's a taco guy that accepts Bitcoin, you'll be able to find it. And so this is starting to happen. And the back end payments, the being able to send Bitcoin in the blink of an eye for virtually free, all that stuff's been built, all the infrastructure. So for the people that have heard that Bitcoin is slow and it takes a while, your coffee's going to be cold by the time, your payment clears, none of that's the case anymore. All the infrastructure for fast, seamless payments on Bitcoin has been built. It's just a matter of people adopting it now. And we're right around the corner from that. And Orange Pill app is playing a critical role in building that out.
That's huge. No, I love that. I really do. And it just makes me think of all the different groups and things that I'm a part of, specifically with investing. Even on my channel, I have a Patreon group, and it's for people that are like minded, that just want to get together and talk. Because honestly, this investing journey, no matter where you're at, anything that has to do with finances is emotional. And sometimes it's just good to have somebody else that's in it with you and just to talk about some things, and like you said, give your wife a break. And but all that to say, it is good. I am a huge proponent in finding people that, just like the Bible says, iron sharpens iron. It's the same thing with investing or jujitsu or just anything. You want to find other people that are like-minded with the same goals, possibly same work ethic, things like that, that can just help you out. And some people are further along on the journey, some people are newer to the journey, but I just think that the Orange Pill app is something that, along with your book and some of the other resources that you said, could really help these beginners, people that are on the fence about it. Because at the end of the day, I'm just here to give education. Like, that's what my channel's all about. I just hope people hear some of the things that I talk about and that they go and do their own research, and hopefully something resonates with them. But I just want to bring the education unbiased, and just here, what do you want to do with it? Go for it. And that's what I really like about the way that you present a lot of your information. So thank you.
Yeah, no, man, my pleasure. I mean, you're absolutely right. And when you think about what the implications are, because markets go in cycles, right? You're in a bear market, you're in a bull market. And this is, you mentioned jiu-jitsu, as we've mentioned a few times before, and we've talked about this a lot. If for anybody, and this might be true for any sport you train in, but it's particularly true in jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu, you're either dominating another human being or being dominated by another human being. So it has these tremendous effects on our ego. And so when we're dominating other human beings, we get this inflated sense of, wow, there's practices that we'll walk out of, and it's like, I'm the baddest dude on the planet because I just tapped everybody out. But then there's other days or weeks that go by, and you're like, man, I'm not getting better. The guys that I used to beat, they're having success against me, or they're beating me, or whatever it happens to be. And then you're like, wow, I think I'm actually getting worse at this. Like, am I the worst jiu-jitsu practitioner ever? And so when you have guys around you that are like, no, like you're practicing new things, and so you're not having as much success in rounds, but you're actually growing. That accountability that comes along is so important in investing. In investing circles, if you have people that are like, we're in the bear market, and you're thinking about like cashing out of a position at the lows, but then your friend slaps you across the face and says, what are you thinking? Like, that you don't just abandon your position in a bear market. Now it's different than if a company has some sort of like technical problem and they're crashing, right? But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a general bear market for index funds, right? Like, you don't like panic sell your index funds because the market's down. No. And it's funny, it's not a new saying, but you were the first person I ever heard say it, is time in the market is better than timing the market. I think that everybody says, like, there's a lot of people that say that. You were the first person from watching your channel that I ever heard say that. And that's such a profound statement. But when we're just by ourselves, we tend to forget that. Sometimes we need the accountability of community to remind us of that.
Totally. And I'm just appreciative that you didn't say out of you and I who's dominating who in jiu-jitsu. For everyone that's watching, it's definitely him. But it's been a lot of fun. He is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, so I'm honored to learn from him. But anyway, to finish this out, what would you say? You gave a couple of resources. What would you say to somebody who, because I think on my channel, most people are either not investing in Bitcoin or don't really care to invest in Bitcoin, but where would you tell them to start? Like specific, like day one, right now at the end of this video, other than reading your book, and some of those sites maybe that you had said, which I'll definitely have put up, but what else would you suggest?
Yeah, I think that if you're looking for maybe a video resource or like a YouTube resource, I would go to the What is Money channel. It's by this guy named Robert Breedlove. Go to his first 9 episodes, and you don't even have to watch all 9 episodes, but the first 9 episodes are a series with Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor is the founder and CEO of MicroStrategy. They own probably more Bitcoin than anybody else in the world, and he makes a very robust case from an investor standpoint. I mean, he's got this very buttoned in as far as why Bitcoin is going to perform a certain way, why risk allocation makes sense for their company, and all that sort of thing. So if you want a kind of a perspective on that, then a more robust perspective from an investor side of things, that's a great one. What is Money with Robert Breedlove and Michael Saylor. But if somebody just wants to experiment, you know what? My mom didn't become an internet user someday. She just sat down. We showed her how to send an email. She clicked send, and then all of a sudden she was using the internet. She never said, "Oh, I'm an internet user now." The same thing's true with Bitcoin. Just go out, buy $10 of Bitcoin. Whether you think it's the worst thing in the world or the best thing in the world, if you're like, I'm bullish on Bitcoin, I would still say buy $10 worth today. If you're a bear or you're a bull, buy $10 today. Hold it for 30 days. Just it'll force you to pay attention. $10 is a really easy amount to say it's up by 30%, it's down by 30%. You'll pay attention to the market. And like I said, I think that the price is the least important part, but the price makes you pay attention to it. Okay. And I guarantee that you're going to read a few more articles. You're going to read one article that comes out by mainstream media that says Bitcoin's bad for the environment, but then that'll force you to go to probably a better website and find out why Bitcoin's actually very good for the environment. We can go into that at some point, but it forces you to find the critique and then find the answer. And all of a sudden, once you've had a critique and then an appropriate answer, your conviction rises quite a bit. And that all comes from just $10 of Bitcoin. It's not anything crazy.
Awesome. Well, I love that. And I'm glad that that's still your advice, because that's exactly what you told me maybe 6 years ago. And I'm glad that you did, because that's what got me into it. Because I was like, I'm going to spend $10 on, I don't know what, a couple of cups of coffee in a couple of days, right? Or something. So whatever, I'm going to try this out. And it really is crazy how our brains work. When you spend money on something, you actually care, even if it's $10. But what I heard from that advice was, for those of you that are already investing, just do exactly what you're doing in your other investments with this new possible asset class. Don't have to put a lot of money in. Some stocks, or most stocks, are more than $10, and most ETFs are more than that. And you can't get fractional shares unless you have certain apps or whatever. And so with Bitcoin, you can put as little or as much as you want. You can buy 20 cents of it, you can buy $200 of it, you could buy the whole one full one for 41,000 or whatever it's at today. So up to you, but yeah, I would highly recommend that if you're interested at all, that you do the research and put your money where your mouth is. Put a little, couple dollars in, see how you like it, and go from there. But thank you so much, Brian. Is there anything else that you would want to end with on this thing?
No, I just think that people are doing the right thing by if they sat through any portion of this video, or preferably the whole thing.
Yes.
I think they took a massive first step. All you need to do is pay attention to this. That's why the suggestion was $10 of Bitcoin. Regardless what you do at the end of the day, as long as you're paying attention to this asset class, you will change the trajectory of your family's future, because it's like understanding the automobile in 1890, right? It's like before people really knew about it. They'd all heard about it, but they didn't really know about it. All you need to do is start paying attention before everybody else. You don't need to invest before everybody else. You don't need to be a part of the parallel economy before everybody else. You just needed to start paying attention before everybody else. And you're doing that if you're watching this right now.
I love that. Perfect encouragement. Thank you so much, Brian, and I'm sure that we will have to do a follow-up on 5 or 6 of the things that you touched on today.
My pleasure, brother.
All right, thank you.